I want to begin by saying how much I appreciate being asked to compete for the department head's job. I've done it before, and I tried to do it again, and this time I'm trying again, but I want to give you some rationale for how you make your decisions, other than just vote early, vote often, which is the way that they do it in Chicago. Sandy has done a really good job of outlining my academic path for getting here, but I had done that in preparation, not knowing that he would do such an extensive introduction. And I must admit that as I was going back through and reflecting on the things that I've done during the process of going from Ohio State to Clemson to Texas A&M, it was quite a rewarding experience to be able to look back on some of those things. And when you see that I've graduated 29 graduate students, to go back and look at those faces and remember how they were then and where they are now. So it was a very exciting time. For those of you who are into metrics, I've put my metrics up here. I will call your attention to several of the things. I have had experience in teaching, research, and extension, and I will describe some of those in a bit more detail as I give you some background on some of the things that are behind these numbers. We were into the information technology, web technology end of things fairly early on, and I'll go through the process of building the Aggie Horticulture website that Sandy talked about. Throughout my entire career, I've been active with undergraduate students through club advising. I no longer can go on the club camping trips the long drives that we used to do, but I still help Leo advise the Texas A&M Horticulture Club. And one of the things that we've always done as part of the Horticulture Club, and it has to do with the fact that I came up through that system, we've always strived to help the club stay very involved in the American Society for Horticultural Science. And that's something I think that's unique about the students here at Texas A&M. I will call your attention to the grants and contracts I had funded, and they're meager by modern day standards. I will tell you though, when I first started at Ohio State, right out of graduate school, I had 2 technicians assigned, a whole compartment of greenhouse space, and within 2 years I had 8 graduate students on departmental funds. One of the things that I'll talk about today, I'll remind you that the theme of my presentation in 2001 was about they moved the cheese. Well, they moved the cheese. And those types of things don't go on in the environment today, and that's reflected by the types of things that a faculty member has to do in order to be able to make it professionally. Sandy mentioned that I'd been involved in tissue culture work. It was unrelated to my academic training in graduate school, because I did my training in graduate school on the freezing-induced release of chloroplast coupling factor from the thylakoid membrane. And I decided, I had a tissue culture course under a faculty member that had studied under F.C. Stewart, who most of you recognize as sort of the godfather of tissue culture. And that was such an exciting experience that I decided to engage in tissue culture when I went to Ohio State. And within a few years, we had developed micropropagation systems for a number of woody ornamental trees and shrubs. This was our first here. It's Juneberry or Amelanchier. We've also done work with Hallie Jolivet cherry, birches, sweet gums, and probably 7 or 8 other of the woody trees and shrubs. We did research on herbaceous plants, begonias, African violets, and I'll describe some of our African violet work in a little bit more detail, as well as tomatoes. And one of the things that at the time I think was unique about the approach that we took is not only did we develop the systems in the lab, but we carried those through to the field. So when we brought a nurseryman in to tour our research lab, we were able to say, this is how you do it in the lab, and this is what they look like when you have them in the production field. So that was a value-added component that we had. Our lab was among the first that succeeded in regenerating a tree from a single cell. At the time that we were doing this work, we were part of a team that was attempting to create a somatic hybrid of American elm to induce disease resistance into the American elms. This work was funded by the USDA Nursery Crops Research Lab, and we succeeded in developing a protoplast system for one of the partners, Pioneer Elm, but we never succeeded in developing the system for the American elm. And this was the first tree that we had regenerated from a single cell. I left Ohio while this work was just winding up, and it was discontinued when I went to Clemson. Some of the most exciting research I've done has been involved with undergraduate students. That was the work that we did on chimeral segregation and the pinwheel flowering African violets. I had 4 different students working through the details of this project, and in the course of this project, we were able to get 2 publications in the American Journal of Botany and able to refute a paper that was published in Science magazine, which at the time I thought was a really big deal. We were able to develop a commercial propagation system for the pinwheel violets. They are chimeras and they don't come true to type by traditional propagation methods, and we developed a system using axillary or inflorescences and the axillary buds from inflorescences which came true to type. This is one of our true periclinal chimeras that we developed in the process of the project. We had several of these, but we have since lost them because they have very poor vigor when you take them out of the tissue culture setting. This is the work that we described that refuted the paper that was published, interestingly, by a Texas A&M faculty member in Science magazine, where we were able to have a pinwheel flowering chimera that we were able to segregate and still maintain the variegation pattern of the leaf. They had used the same model to make a statement about the fact that the regeneration from the leaf involved all 3 histogen layers, and therefore the chimera was complete, when in effect they had misinterpreted the fact that this plant, the leaf pattern, was not a chimeral. It was a genetic mosaic pattern, and we were able to segregate the chimera for the flower color but leave the mosaic pattern of the leaf intact. And that was a very exciting work at the time. When I moved to Clemson, we started working on a different chimera. This one is the chimeral rhododendron President Roosevelt. This is President Roosevelt right here. And in the course of developing this micropropagation system, we produced thousands and thousands and thousands of plants. And lo and behold, the graduate student discovered one where the chimera was reversed. The layers of the histogen switched, and we were able to isolate this, and we released and named this chimera Carolina Jewel. I brought Carolina Jewel with me when I came from Clemson, but alas, rhododendrons in central Texas and salt were not kind to Carolina Jewel. So we subsequently lost all the plants. We had released the plants to a nurseryman in South Carolina, and he had already concluded that the plant was not going to make it because it was very susceptible to marginal leaf burn. So even though it was an outstanding ornamental plant, and even though it had a lot of rich morphological history to it, it didn't make it in the real world. So, but I still have very fond memories of Carolina Jewel. When I came here, and this slide will be very special to Larry Stein. I didn't know Larry was going to be here today. I should have warned you that this slide was going to be up here. When I came to Texas A&M, I started working with the Texas Superstar team, and one of the things that we did there was we continued the micropropagation work, where we took outstanding ornamentals that had been selected, and we used the micropropagation system to ramp up the numbers so that instead of releasing 5 cuttings to a nurseryman, we could release 50 plants to a nurseryman. This one was first isolated or identified as Nacogdoches. I wanted to name it the Yellow Rose for Texas, but instead it was named after Larry Stein's grandmother. It's called Grandma's Yellow Rose. and it's now one of the Texas superstars. We've also done ramping up of Belinda's Dream. We did that in our lab, so we released large numbers of Belinda's Dream. And we'd been working on a project with Mike Arnold for about 3 years on Mexican buckeye. And Mexican buckeye really got the best of me for a while, so I decided to put it on hold. And when my last undergraduate student worker left, I was no longer able to keep up with the necessary subcultures to keep Mexican buckeye in culture, but I have some pretty slides of Mexican buckeye. When I went back on the faculty in 1994 after my term as department head, that was about the time that Al Gore discovered the internet, and the first web browser, Mosaic, I say that kiddingly, of course. I see some people think. Actually, it was Mike Berners-Lee, or Tim Berners-Lee was the one that discovered the internet. But in any event, I had been involved with information technology work at Clemson. We actually developed a plant selector that used Apple HyperCard stacks to fetch pictures of ornamental plants off of a video disc. So it was a combination of digital and analog systems. And that was my entry into the information technology world. And when I went back on the faculty, I was fortunate enough to have one semester off without teaching until I started developing my teaching load. And I went out and taught myself how to write HTML. And this is the sequence of the graphic banners for Aggie Horticulture from 1994, about a year later, about 2 years later, about 3 years later, and then what was finally the graphic front page of Aggie Horticulture when I handed it over to Martin in 2008. So in the sequence of about 14 years, let me tell you a little bit about what Aggie Horticulture did. And I would be remiss to say that Aggie Horticulture was built by about 44 different people. I did the computer work, I did the graphic design, I did the HTML coding, but the information providing was done by the likes of Jerry Parsons and Larry Stein and Keith Hansen and Mike Arnold and Don Wilkerson, and there were so many people that contributed information and expertise to Aggie Horticulture. This was from my faculty impact statement in 2008, right before I left, and I think it will tell you a little bit about our progression. Netcraft is an organization that does annual surveys or periodic surveys of the web and looks at the number of web servers that are registered. And the earliest Netcraft survey was in 1995. And in 1995, there were 18,000 servers on the web. We were already in business for almost a year at that time, so we were earlier than that. But by 2007, that number had grown to 143 million, and today it's grown to 582.7 million. So Aggie Horticulture was one of the first 18,000 divided by 582 million web servers on the World Wide Web. And so I use that to say that we got into the business early. And one of the reasons that's important is because we established ourselves as a reliable source of information very early on. We actually had a search engine running on Aggie Horticulture before Google, before Yahoo. So we recognized the need that we had to do that. One of the other things that you need to do is compare yourself to your peers. While it doesn't sound very exciting to be ranked 41,000th, being ranked 41,000th compared to Ohio State, which is ranked 305,000th, is quite a statement. And Cornell is ranked 292,000. So when you compare yourselves to other institutions that are highly regarded in your field and you come out favorably, then you tend to make a big deal about that. Having said that, this is the one which we still get a lot of mileage out of, and that is the fact that about 7 or 8 years ago, the Cooperative Extension Service, or Texas AgriLife Extension now, established a database for reporting the activity of web servers, and they standardized the information that we reported. And in 2007, Aggie Horticulture was serving 69% of the pages of all the servers registered in the extension database. So our information is sought by a lot of people. Our system is a very active system, and this is one of the testaments to the people that contributed information to our system. Okay, that's prologue. Let's talk a little bit now about the letter of application and the information that the candidates were asked to prepare for the application process. And some of these were interesting to prepare because I had honestly never sat down and thought about ever having had an administrative philosophy. But so it took a little bit of reflection to go through and think about, well, what is it I believe in, and what is it that guides my management decisions, and what is it that I would bring to the table when it comes to being a department head again. Then we were also asked to prepare goals for the department, a plan to bring in external funds, and to talk a little bit about our ability to foster research, education, and extension programs. And I hope you will be able to deduce from the experience that I've had that I'm not only knowledgeable and experienced in teaching research and extension systems, but I'm very much have been a participant, and I'm very much encouraging of the three legs of the stool. I mentioned that in 2001, when I was doing my interview seminar, I used the management textbook. Well, it's not a textbook, it's a little small book, Who Moved My Cheese, as a guide for that presentation. This book has been used more than, according to the literature I found on it, has been used more than any other management learning tool that has been published, which is just incredible because it's a very interesting allegory. It uses the approach of two mice and two little people and how they problem solve on the route to finding new cheese when the old cheese has been moved. The thing that I want to remind you is that you have to be ready to change again and again and again. It's not enough for me to have said in 2001 that the cheese has been moved, but the cheese had been moved again, and so we need to think about how we're going to address that. The other thing that I put in my letter of intent in 2001 was this statement, and there are several truisms still in this statement that apply even yet today. One is, I don't feel good about the place in which we find ourselves. I think we have some real problems that we have to address. Declining budgets now appear as certain as death and taxes. That's true, and that hasn't changed. And I don't feel our faculty has a clear consensus on its vision for the future. And I truly believe that. I think we have gotten a long way apart from consensus decision making, and we've gotten a long way apart from our mutual expectations of what our department is to be. And I would like to visit with you about some of the ideas I have that would bring a change to that. We were good. Texas A&M has been ranked as high as number 2 in the Gorman ranking. We were good. But you can't look at what has happened in the past and say that's necessarily going to apply to the future. I don't have all the answers. I don't even have all the questions, but I think I have some considerations about some of the problems that we're having, and I think we have, or I have an idea about how to approach those. We're never going to be able to go back and rebuild the strength that we're missing. We're never going to fill all the holes. all the missing positions are never going to be replaced in kind, and so we need to determine the ones that are most important. We need to determine the direction that we're going in, and we need to determine a doable path on how to get there. In terms of my philosophy, my philosophy on being a department head is a lot like my philosophy on being a faculty member, in that it's very difficult for you to learn something for a student. The students pretty much have to learn for themselves. The department head or departmental level administration's job is to help and assist and make sure that we have effective management of all of our resources. I don't think I've ever met a department head that got a grant for a faculty member, because it's the idea, it's the scientific approach to a problem that's saleable to a granting agency. It's not something that we can do. A department level administrator can throw obstacles in your path, or they can remove obstacles from your path. And I think that it's very, very important that we remove as many obstacles as we can. The departmental administration can help you maintain infrastructure, can help you maintain assistance, but then when it comes to actually getting the grant or doing the job or doing the research or advising the graduate students, that's something that's done by individual faculty members. So without appearing to have all the answers, let me tell you about some of the goals that I would have in terms of moving into the administrative position. One of the things I think we've gotten away from is the habit of meeting together as a faculty and discussing and arguing and allowing each other to examine each other's opinions and thoughts. We have attempted to approach this on the teaching side more effectively last year than this year, because we're really in transition. But I think that it's important to constantly meet as a faculty and talk about things and agree on consensus directions. There is no such thing as a unanimously positive opinion. Everybody has different opinions, but on some things we should be able to get to the point where we can say we want the department to go this direction, or we want the department to go this direction. Or we can afford to go this direction, but we can't afford to go this direction. So I think that one of the ways that you make those types of decisions is you sit down in a room and you talk. We've had some good experience doing that on the learning outcomes for the teaching program. I think we're at the point now where we've achieved broad consensus on how to approach our different degree programs, and I think that's a model that would work well. Each faculty member or each person in a department really has to develop an individual plan on how they're going to muster the resources together to do the program that they are attempting to do. The department head can meet with you and review your plan and suggest alternatives and suggest considerations and tell you things that might be more doable than other things. But when it comes to determining how you're going to run your program and how you're going to find the funds and whether or not you're going to hire a postdoc or a graduate student, those are the types of decisions that each faculty member has to maintain or has to get to the point of obtaining. And that's true whether you're talking about research or teaching or anything else. You have to determine, and you have to have that determination vented or vetted by the rest of the group and by the department administration. You have to determine what it is your program is going to become within the bounds that you have. A part of that must be doing something to contribute to the group's success. Otherwise, you have a collection of programs that are all striving for individual excellence while none of the programs is cooperating. Nothing is being gained from the synergy of being a department. I think we need to stretch our undergraduates a little bit more. I think we need to make sure that our graduate students all have an outstanding research experience. I think that for some of our graduate students that may mean making sure that they get their research done and teach one less course. I think that we need to be very, very careful that we do a good job of protecting our graduate students from themselves and making sure that they get good academic background that will prepare them for the future. The future that we're attempting to prepare them for is one that we're trying to make sure that we have the capability to do now. They're going to have to write grants. They're going to have to be successful in obtaining extramural funds. They're going to have to write publications. They're going to have to mentor graduate students. And they're also going to have to teach, but I think we all recognize that it's very, very important that that sound fundamental research background is made a priority. I think that we need to renew our commitment to the Texas horticulture program. One of the things that was very much a term in vogue when I came here in 1990 was that we had a statewide horticulture program. And that statewide horticulture program included research scientists on and off campus, it included teaching faculty, it included extension specialists, it included county horticulturists. So that all taken as a sum total was the Texas A&M horticulture program. I think we need to renew our commitment to that philosophy, and I think we need to make sure that all elements that I mentioned are plugged into that philosophy. So I think sometimes we tend to think of on campus and off campus. I think we need to visit more. I think we need to have more common meetings. I think we need to do more exchange of graduate students, and I think we need to do more collaborative research with our colleagues at other places, both extension and research. I could say the same things about extension and research. I think that the whole program needs to renew a commitment to the industry, and by renewing the commitment to the industry, I don't mean that everybody on the faculty needs to go out and visit a grower today, but I do mean that when, as a department, we go to the industry and say, will you help us with this? Will you donate money to that? Will you help provide support for this? When we go to the industry, if we haven't done anything that's positively impacted them, then it's very difficult. It's very easy for them to say, well, who are you? And why are you coming to see me today? If you are working in the area of nursery crops, and you haven't been to the TNLA meeting in recent times, then that's something that will generally be viewed as a problem. So I think that it's time, as one of the solutions that we're going to have is that we have to go out and raise more private funds. Well, it's going to be very difficult to raise those private funds if you've had limited impact and limited interaction with the industry. That doesn't mean that everybody has to do it on a daily basis, but that does mean that we need to have some exposure to the industry. I think that we need to increase our national and international reputation. I think we need to do that collectively as well as individually. I have heard a lot from different people outside the state of Texas that some of our people in the state of Texas are only known in the state of Texas. We're professionals. We strive to be among the leaders in the horticultural statewide as well as throughout the country. And it's difficult to do that if you don't have a reputation that's beyond the borders of the immediate geographic area that you're in. That means going to professional meetings. That means participating on working groups. That means participating in the development of national resources like e-extension. That means having your graduate students go to those meetings, and that means having more of an impact than just a local impact. I do think that the administration needs to develop a plan to increase the funding, but I think that plan is many faceted. I think it includes everything from encouraging the submission of grants to raising funds through endowments and gifts, and working with the legislature as needed. So I think it's a many-faceted type approach. But I do think that you need to recognize that the opportunity for increasing appropriated funding is almost non-existent. And that's true whether you're talking about state exceptional items or whether you're talking about earmark funds from the federal government or whether you're talking about direct appropriations from the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Those funds have dried up at all those levels in the same way that they've dried up for us in the department. With the current outlook and the current lack of respect that is being perpetuated for the academic institutions, I think that's going to be a very difficult one for us to address. So part of the answer on this is, well, if you're not going to get more appropriated money, then you're going to have to get more grants. You're going to have to write more proposals. We're going to have to raise more money from foundations. We're going to have to solicit funds from industry. We're going to have to get contracts with TDA. We're going to have to partner with other states in trying to get items funded. So it's very different now than it was, but I think the way it's different now, the cheese has been moved, and that's the way it's going to stay. We do all this already. We are involved in fee-based programs. We're involved in getting grants. We have a number of individuals in the department that get big grants. We have a number of individuals that get a lot of small grants. So we're doing that already. But we're being challenged to do more because the administration is expecting us to do more. We're needing to do more because we want to expand our programs. One of the things that's going to be a real challenge in the near term is where, as a department, we're going to be able to come up with the funds needed to help provide the startup funds for a new faculty hire. Even if the universities or if the administration says you can hire a faculty in this or that area, we still have to come up with startup funds to be able to make that happen. And right now, I'm sure you've heard Sandy and Dorothy say a number of occasions, we are financially about as stretched, about as thin as we can be stretched. The pursuit of funding has become an integral part of the faculty member's job. And that's true whether you're talking about a teaching program or an extension program or a research program. So that's something that we need to consider as part of our job. We need to allocate time to do it. However, that needs to be done in a manner so that there is a likelihood for success. I'm not a proponent in blasting out a huge number of proposals in the hope of having 10% of them funded. I think you need to be smart when you do the search for money, and I think you need to be aware of the fact that the program that you're trying to establish needs to drive what you're looking for rather than having the money that you get drive the program that you're trying to have. So you need to take that into account because it would be real easy to be driven off course in the pursuit for money. And that's actually happened to me several times in the past where we've gotten grants or I've been a part of a grant that turned out to be more labor and more stress than it was really worth. So you need to take that into consideration. I want to leave you with some tough questions. I've said before that I don't have all the answers. I'm not sure I have any of the answers because I think part of the answers are going to be a group type process. Are we still relevant? If you had told me 5 years ago that the Department of Biology would stop teaching taxonomy, I would have said, well, that's not going to happen. Somebody's got to teach plant taxonomy. Well, no, they don't. That biology is apparently evolving in a different direction, and so they've chosen to let some things go by the wayside. There are a number of cases where departments of horticulture around the country have been merged with other departments. And the reports back on some of those have been that it's been very rewarding and it's been very good. Results in an increased synergism and increased service to the industry, better graduate students, more funding, the whole 9 yards. But then there are also some cases where horticulture has become subservient to other disciplines and essentially evolved out of existence. Are we still relevant? Are we teaching the right things we need to teach? Are our students getting jobs? Are our graduate students being placed in good positions? Are we doing the right thing? Are we still relevant? We have to answer those questions. Are we right-sized? How can anybody say that we're right-sized when our budget for salaries is essentially 100% of our money? We have no operating funds. If a piece of equipment breaks, we just sort of leave it along the side and go on and do something else. I don't think we can exist that way. I think we need to decide a strategy for how we get to the right size, how we create a set of resources that we can use for equipment maintenance and repair, greenhouse personnel, equipment repair, and things like that. I think we need some operating funds, and we're going to have to find a way to do that, even in the absence of new funds. So I think we need to make a decision that maybe we're not right-sized, and how can we get to be right-sized? That gets back to the notion of being sustainable. Do significant gaps exist in our programs? Who are you going to listen to when you decide whether or not there are gaps? You go out and talk to the growers, they're going to say, oh, we have a gap in this or that area. The people in East Texas think they're being underserved by the fact that we haven't had an extension specialist up there in some time. If you go to another part of the state, they say, oh, well, you know, Nancy Rowe's position hasn't been replaced. Well, who are you going to listen to when you make those decisions? You have to have a way of taking the feedback and filtering it so that you can do the best you can with the resources that you have. So we need to really decide who we're going to listen to and how we're going to judge that. What happens if the legislature does in this fiscal year or the coming fiscal year what they've done in this biennium? If we have another biennium like the last biennium, then we will be forced to downsize just by virtue of the fact that that's going to happen. We don't know that that's going to happen, and we're going to try to prepare for the fact that it won't happen, but we need to have some idea, and we need to do some if-then-what analysis so that we can be a little bit more prepared than we were last time for taking some of these severe reductions. How do we measure our efforts? I put up that table of metrics on the beginning. Is that all that matters? Do we look at impact statements? Is it what the deans say? Who are we trying to address when it comes to measuring our success? How do we assess our programs? Do we spend enough time doing that? Is it good enough to get 6 papers a year? How do you measure those types of efforts? Who do you compare yourself to? And I probably shouldn't make this statement in public since it's going to go everywhere in the world. But I think it's very ridiculous that Texas A&M finds itself 15 years or 5 years into a program of excellence, and all of a sudden they're starting to identify the parameters that they're going to use to determine whether they've achieved their goals. And they're searching around to try to identify the institutions that we compare as peer institutions. Wouldn't you have done that early on? But I do think we need to decide who we need to compare ourselves to. Do we need to compare ourselves to a multidiscipline, heavily industry-funded department like UC Davis or Cornell? Or do we compare ourselves to an Arkansas or an LSU or a Clemson? Who do we consider our peers? And what is it that we're trying to compare with them? How do we formulate the answers? Do we just sort of go along and never talk to each other and all of a sudden have a meeting when there's a problem that we have to address? Or do we meet on a regular basis and do we study some of these things and do we prepare a plan for how to deal with them? Remember, they moved the cheese. And if you'll notice, the graphic that I put on this slide is the Vision 2020 graphic. And the closer it gets to the year 2020, the more you're going to see that, and the more you're going to hear about it, and the more reporting you're going to do to it, and the more achieving the vision of being a top 10 research institution is going to become driving what we do. So, yeah, they moved the cheese, and the they happens to be the Texas A&M University administration. So we need to envision how we're going to approach the problems that we find ourselves in now collectively, and we need to determine a strategy for how we're going to get to the future. Because it does no good to say, well, 10 years ago we had this. Well, it's not 10 years ago, and it's never going to be 10 years ago again, and we're never going to have that position filled again, and we're never all going to have technicians again. So how are we going to do the job that we need to do with the resources that we can bring together and bring to bear on the problem? And the burden falls back on each individual. I think that each individual needs to prepare a plan, but that plan is not done in a vacuum. It's okay for an individual to say, I want my program to do this, this, and this, but you've got to realize that you're operating within the realm of a whole. And if what you're trying to do impinges on somebody else's right to be able to achieve their goal, then it's not going to work. So we need to all develop a plan for how to structure our programs. But we have to realize that at least part of that consideration has to be, how is this going to fit into the whole department? How is it going to be fit within the departmental and college goals? And what piece do I play? What brick am I on the mortar or on the foundation that goes with the department? And while it's easy to say that faculty members are rewarded on the basis of individual excellence, and we see that repeated over and over and over again, I think one of the things that is very important is to remember that individual excellence is on the basis of some parameter. You could be excellent in teaching, you could be excellent in research, you could be excellent in extension, you could be an excellent grant getter, you could be an excellent graduate advisor. You need to consider the fact that other people are good at other things, and as long as everybody is working hard and making accomplishments and it fits within the overall departmental goals, then they're valued as well. And so one of the things I think we need to do is get back to this culture of valuing individual contributions and valuing individual excellence and how it fits within the departmental goal. I realize that promotion and tenure is not made to a department as a whole, or promotion to professor is not made to an extension unit as a whole, but I think that a great deal about the way that the university administration views our department is impacted by the whole as much as it is by a few outstanding individuals.